The smile that didn't feel right. I remember the day it all started to unravel. It was a Saturday. I had just come back from picking up some old tools from my late father's workshop. He passed a year ago, and my mom had finally decided to sell the house, so I went to grab a few sentimental things before the realtors came through. My wife, Lindsay, was waiting for me when I got home, barefoot in the kitchen, cutting up peaches like she was on the cover of some summer romance novel. She smiled at me, but it wasn't the smile I knew. Not quite. Have fun digging through the past? She asked playfully. I smiled back, but something in me felt off. Lindsay and I had been married 7 years. We'd met at a company Christmas party. She was a new hire in HR, and I was in IT support. Her laugh hit me first. Then her eyes. We were electric from the start. But over the past 6 months, something shifted. We stopped laughing at the same things. She started pulling away. Subtle things. Like phone calls she'd take in the bathroom or her suddenly working out 3 times a week when she used to hate the gym. I thought maybe it was just marriage getting old. Or maybe I was the problem. But then came the visit from my stepdad, Richard. Richard married my mom when I was 14. He was a smooth-talking ex-military guy who always smelled like motor oil and bourbon. He wasn't cruel, but he was never fatherly either. More like a roommate I didn't ask for. We never really bonded, but he made my mom laugh, and he treated her all right, so I learned to tolerate him. After my dad passed and my mom moved to Florida to live near my sister, Richard stayed up here. Claimed he was tied down with work, even though he was retired. So when he texted to say he was dropping by our place on a random Wednesday, I raised an eyebrow. But I didn't think much of it. He showed up with a 6-pack and a weirdly cheerful attitude. And that's when I first noticed how weird things felt. Lindsay laughed too loud at his jokes. He complimented her dress, a little too long, his eyes a little too slow. And she smiled back with that same not quite right smile. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was paranoid. That I was insecure. I didn't want to be that guy. But then came the camping trip. Every spring, I take a solo trip up to the mountains. Just me, a tent, and no cell reception. Lindsay always encouraged it. Said it gave her time to recharge, too. But this year, when I mentioned it, she seemed almost too eager to get me out of the house. That was the final gut punch I didn't listen to. When I got back from the trip, something had changed in her. She was distracted, distant. She smiled at her phone a little too often. And when I hugged her, I swear she flinched like she'd forgotten what I felt like. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked the house cameras. We had an old front porch cam that backed up to a cloud service I had set up years ago and forgot about. She didn't know it was still recording. There wasn't any footage inside the house. Just the front porch. But that's all I needed. Because clear as day, 2 days into my trip, I saw Richard, my stepdad, pull up in his beat-up red Ford. He wasn't carrying anything. No tools. No bags. Nothing but a smug look and a bottle of wine. She met him at the door. Wearing a silk robe I bought her for our anniversary. She kissed him. Not a greeting. A kiss. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark, rewinding the clip. Watching it again. And again. And again. The man who watched me grow up. Who sat at our wedding. Who toasted us with a glass of whiskey and called me his son. That man had walked into my house and... No, I couldn't go there. Not yet. I didn't tell Lindsay what I saw. I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls or send texts or call my mom. I just watched. And that's when I decided I wouldn't blow up. I'd build up something better than revenge. Something quieter. More patient. More painful. Because if Lindsay and Richard wanted to play dirty, I was going to play smarter. I spent the next week pretending everything was fine. You know how hard it is to look someone in the eye. Someone you kissed, loved, laughed with, and not show them you know they betrayed you with your own damn stepfather? It's harder than people think. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because something inside me wanted more than a fight. I wanted clarity. I wanted to understand how long it had been going on. I wanted to watch how she lied, to see if she even hesitated. That Friday night, I brought home her favorite takeout, opened a bottle of wine, and queued up one of those dumb reality shows she loved. She sat across from me on the couch, hair in a bun, wearing my old college sweatshirt like everything was normal. I asked her, "How was your week?" She looked me right in the eyes and smiled. Busy. I missed you, though. And right then, I knew something I wish I didn't. She could lie without blinking. The next morning, I went down to the basement, pulled out an old whiskey bottle, the exact brand Richard always brought to Thanksgiving dinners, and placed it neatly on the kitchen counter. A test. That night, when she walked in from yoga, she looked at the bottle, paused, and then, for just a split second, I saw it. Guilt. She covered it fast, said, "Did you buy that for your poker night?" Poker night was something Richard and I used to do once a month. I stopped going after my dad passed. But her knowing that meant they'd talked about it, maybe even laughed about it. I smiled and said, "Yeah, thought I'd toast to something old." She didn't ask what. The next day, I started the real work. I went to an old friend of mine, Sean, who works in AV security. Told him I was setting up a full home system for paranoia reasons. He didn't ask questions. By Monday, we had tiny cameras set up in the hallway, living room, and garage entrance. No bedrooms, nothing illegal, just eyes where I knew they'd come in or out. I also did something that made my stomach twist. I placed an AirTag in the backseat pocket of Richard's car. I'd helped him swap out a spare tire once in the spring. He never locks his car. Never did. Too arrogant, too old school. I figured if I was wrong, I'd be the paranoid idiot. But I wasn't wrong. Not even close. That Wednesday, while I was supposedly stuck late in a budget meeting, Richard's little red dot parked outside my house at 3:47 p.m. Lindsay got home from work at 4:05. By 4:15, I had a motion alert ping to my phone, movement in the living room. I didn't check the footage right away. I went to the break room, poured a cup of coffee, sat at the table with two coworkers talking about their fantasy football leagues, and waited for the shaking in my hand to stop. Then I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and pulled up the feed. She let him in. He kissed her like it was his house. His hands were familiar, like they'd done it 100 times. And her smile? That same one she gave me when I walked in with takeout. That same damn smile. But the part that broke me wasn't the kiss. It was what she said after. She looked at him and said, "I wish he'd just find someone else already. I can't leave without half looking like the bad guy." That was it, right there. It wasn't just cheating. It was calculated. She wanted me to pull the plug, to be the villain, so she could walk away clean with half the assets and none of the blame. That's when the anger settled into something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to dismantle. Not just her story, her exit strategy. I wanted her to think everything was still under control, that she still had the upper hand. So that night, I cooked her dinner. Candlelight, music, the same playlist from our wedding reception. I poured her a glass of wine, kissed her forehead, and told her, "I've been thinking. Maybe we should take a little vacation. Just the two of us. Reconnect." She looked surprised, but not guilty, not even nervous, just intrigued. She smiled and said, "That sounds nice." And that's when I realized the scariest part of all this. She wasn't worried about getting caught. Because in her mind, she already won. We booked a cabin in the mountains. Same place we went on our honeymoon, actually. That was intentional. I wanted her wrapped in nostalgia, just enough to keep her blind to the storm building behind my smile. I rented the cabin under a separate email account. Paid cash. I didn't want any digital trail that connected back to my bank account. Not because I was doing anything illegal, but because I didn't want her to know who really owned the cabin next door. More on that in a second. Lindsay packed light. Too light, honestly. She always overpacked for trips, but this time she didn't even bring her hiking shoes. Just makeup, 2 books she'd never actually read, and lingerie I hadn't seen in over a year. It was like she was performing. For someone else. That's when it hit me. She was expecting me to try to fix things. To seduce her. To act like the desperate husband trying to win her back. She wanted to turn me down. To look justified. I smiled. Let her believe it. We got to the cabin Friday afternoon. I cooked dinner, poured the wine, lit the candles, the whole romantic script. She leaned into it, laughing at my bad jokes, touching my hand across the table, and acting like nothing had ever gone wrong between us. But her eyes were scanning. Waiting. Not for me. I knew she had texted Richard earlier that day. I had his phone cloned to a burner I kept in my glove box. The messages were encrypted but not protected from metadata. I could see the timestamps, not the content. And I saw one ping go out right after we arrived at the cabin. So I waited. At 9:43 p.m., I told her I was going to take a quick shower. I left my phone on the kitchen counter, just in case she wanted to text someone while I was out of sight. She did. The motion camera I had hidden in my duffel bag, pointed at the living room, caught it all. Her slipping her phone out of her purse, her typing, her smirk. Then she erased the messages and went right back to sipping her wine like nothing happened. By midnight, we were in bed. She turned her back to me, claimed she was too tired, and within 5 minutes she was pretending to be asleep. I lay there for a while, listening to the wind press against the windows, and thought about how far gone she really was. How the woman I loved, the one who cried when I proposed, who held my hand through my dad's funeral, could look me in the face and still lie so easily. But I wasn't here to mourn. I was here to set the trap. The next morning, I went into town to get coffee and breakfast. In reality, I walked 2 cabins down and met with my old friend and former coworker, Nate. Nate works in corporate security now. But back in the day, we built surveillance tools for financial fraud investigations. He owed me a favor. And this was the easiest job he'd ever done. Nate had already installed the camera in the living room, synced it to cloud storage, and showed me how to remotely activate audio recording with a tap. "You're sure this is legal?" he asked. "It's my cabin," I said. "Technically, I'm allowed to monitor it however I want. Even if your wife doesn't know you own it." "She doesn't need to," I said. "Not yet." That night, I didn't say anything when Lindsay started texting again after dinner. I didn't even flinch when she told me she had a migraine and needed to lie down early. I waited. At 10:18 p.m., the driveway camera pinged. "Richard, parked just outside the tree line. Lights off, right on schedule." At 10:22 p.m., Lindsay walked out onto the back deck in a robe. Just like she did in the footage from home. Only this time, she wasn't alone. I stepped out from the shadows on the deck and stood behind her. She turned, startled, her face drained of color when she saw me. "Going somewhere?" I asked. She opened her mouth but nothing came out. Richard, the coward, stayed in the car. So I walked down the steps, flashlight in hand, and aimed it at his windshield. "Why don't you get out and say hi to your son, Richard?" He didn't move, so I walked over and tapped the glass with my wedding ring. Loud, sharp, cold, he finally opened the door. And that's when I hit him, not with my fists, but with truth. "You're done. You're both done." I tossed him an envelope. Inside, a full printout of the photos, timestamps, and synced footage of every visit he made to our house over the past 2 months. All taken legally. He looked at Lindsay, stunned. She was shaking now, still trying to speak. "You think I was just going to let this happen? Walk away like some broken man? Nah, I wanted you to walk right into it. I wanted you to feel comfortable." Richard started to say something, some lame apology, but I shut it down. "I'm not interested in your words. I'm interested in what happens next. Because the real revenge wasn't going to happen here. It was going to happen after." The ride home from the cabin was dead silent. Lindsay didn't say a word the entire time. Just sat there, staring out the window, holding her phone like it was a life raft and she was already sinking. I didn't scream, didn't ask questions, didn't cry. I just drove, because the time for feelings was over. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about control and taking it back. And Richard, that coward, didn't even have the guts to follow us back. He peeled out of that gravel driveway like a scared dog. I didn't care. He wasn't my target anymore. Lindsay was. See, there's this idea people have about revenge, that it's explosive, messy, loud. But that's the dumb kind. The kind that makes you look crazy. The kind that lets cheaters walk away saying, "See? He was unstable. That's why I left." I wasn't going to give her that. No, I was going to burn the illusion, not the house. I was going to dismantle her carefully crafted story piece by piece, while I smiled. First thing Monday morning, I called our shared financial advisor. I scheduled an urgent, solo meeting and explained the situation. He wasn't shocked. People like him hear this stuff more than you'd think. I told him to freeze the discretionary accounts, the joint savings, the vacation fund, and the renovation account Lindsay had been using to upgrade the guest room. Why? Because I already knew she planned to move out soon, and she was going to do it looking like the hurt party. She'd play the disconnected husband card, maybe even hint I was emotionally unavailable. And the money? That was supposed to help launch her new life. Nope. Frozen. Next, I went to the HR director at my company. I told her I'd be needing a few personal days. I didn't give details, just said I was dealing with some family matters and would be working remotely for the rest of the month. She agreed without hesitation. I've been there 11 years. Built up trust. I used those days to talk to a lawyer. And not just any lawyer, a former family law prosecutor who now specializes in high-conflict divorce cases. She reviewed the footage, the messages, the timeline, and then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You've been patient, too patient. We can work with this." Now, here's the part one haven't told you yet. Lindsay and I didn't have a prenup. When we married, we both made average money. She was in HR. I was a mid-level systems analyst. But over the last 5 years, I had moved up into a senior cybersecurity role, got some stock options, and built a comfortable little investment portfolio. And Lindsay? Well, she'd been promoted once and then coasted. Lately, I'd even caught her quietly applying for new jobs, probably so she could slide out without relying on me. Smart in theory, but her timing was off. Because I was already a step ahead. I didn't just want the divorce. I wanted the narrative, so I started laying the groundwork. I, accidentally, left the footage open on our home office computer one night. Just long enough for her to see that I had everything. She saw it the next morning. "How long have you had those videos?" she asked, voice cracking. I sipped my coffee and said, "Long enough. You can't, I can, and I will, but I haven't yet." That's when I saw it. Not guilt, not sorrow. Just fear. Fear that her clean break fantasy had turned into a PR disaster. Because here's the truth. Lindsay cared deeply about how things looked. That was always her thing, appearances. Social media, professional reputation. She was the kind of person who deleted old photos when people unfollowed her. Every post was curated, filtered, liked by all the right people. And now, I had the one thing that could wreck it all. The story, and the proof. But here's the twist she didn't see coming. I wasn't going to go public. I wasn't going to send the video to her family. I wasn't going to post it. I wasn't going to tell her employer. Because public revenge makes you look bitter. Private revenge? That makes them unravel. I told her this. You will leave, on my terms. Quietly. You'll agree to a fair settlement. No fight, no drama. You'll walk away with what's reasonable, nothing more. And if you try to flip the script, try to make me out to be the villain, try to stretch this into some courtroom performance. I slid the flash drive across the table. This becomes part of the record. She didn't touch it, just stared at it, like it was radioactive. And in that moment, I saw her realize, the story she thought she'd control. It was already mine. All I had to do was decide how I wanted to tell it. 2 weeks after the cabin. That's when it hit me. The marriage was already dead. Had been for a while. I was just the only one who kept showing up to the cemetery pretending it was still breathing. And like any funeral, it needed a eulogy, not for her, but for me. A way to say goodbye to the man I used to be. The man who trusted too easily, loved too hard, ignored the cracks, hoping they'd seal themselves with time and shared memories. I didn't speak this eulogy out loud. I wrote it down, folded it up, burned it in the fireplace one night while she was at yoga. She still thought I believed her. That's what stunned me the most, not the betrayal, not the affair, not even who she did it with. It was the audacity, the confidence, the way she thought she could outmaneuver me emotionally and walk away unscathed. She was wrong. After our conversation about the footage and the settlement, she went quiet. Not humble, just calculating. You could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to find a loophole, a play. She even tried a new tactic, sympathy. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said one night. "I just stopped feeling like myself." "You mean stopped feeling married?" I asked. She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I could have blown up right then. Called her every name I thought about in my darkest hours. But instead, I said something I never thought I'd say. "Thank you." She blinked, confused. "Thank you for showing me what kind of person you are. Because now, I know exactly who I'm divorcing." And just like that, her face dropped. Not anger, not fear, shame. It was the first time I saw it, real shame. Not guilt, not excuses. Just the weight of truth sinking in. But the thing about shame is, it's not my job to carry it for her anymore. So I kept going with my plan. You remember Richard, my stepfather? The man who helped raise me and then slept with my wife. Yeah, I wasn't done with him either. You see, I didn't just get proof of their affair. I got proof of something else. Remember the AirTag I planted in his car? Well, turns out, Richard had been doing a lot more driving than I thought, and not just to my house. He'd been meeting up with women. Multiple. One of them, married, with 2 kids. Her husband, military, deployed. I didn't go public. That's not who I am. But I did send an anonymous package to her husband's base. A burner email with photos, license plates, times and locations. I don't know what came of it. But I know one thing. Richard started showing up to fewer places after that. Eventually, he stopped texting Lindsay altogether. Guess the fantasy wasn't worth the fallout. And Lindsay? She agreed to the divorce terms. No fight, no courtroom drama, no attempt at manipulating friends or family. She knew I was holding the matchbook. She just didn't know how close I was to lighting it. I let her keep the car. I took the house. Why? Because I wanted her to feel that moment. The moment when she turned the key in a stranger's apartment, sat on a couch she didn't pick, and realized that comfort wasn't something you bought. It was something you built. And she burned it. A few days before she moved out, she left a note on the kitchen counter. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper with my name on it. It said, "You were a good man. I wish I had been better." I didn't keep it. I didn't need it, because I already knew I was a good man. I still am. And now, I'm free to be a better one, just not for her. It's funny, the first night she was gone, I didn't sleep. Not because I was sad, but because the house was quiet. It was a kind of quiet I hadn't heard in years. No sound of her in the bathroom brushing her teeth for too long. No drawers slamming, no passive-aggressive sighs, no footsteps walking past me like I was invisible. It wasn't peace, exactly. But it was the absence of tension. And that felt close enough. I walked through each room, barefoot, just looking. The couch still had her indents. Her half of the closet was empty except for a wire hanger and some dust. The fridge still had a jar of her fancy almond butter she always forgot about after the second week. Little things. Things that reminded me of how much space she took up in our life. And how little of it she ever intended to keep. I should have felt relief. But what I felt was stranger than that. I felt like I was being watched. Not in the creepy, haunted kind of way. I mean in the way where you know someone's thinking about you, even if they're far away. That instinct? It's real, and it was buzzing in my chest like a live wire. I ignored it, until 3 days later, when it happened. A text. From her. Lindsay. Hey, just wanted to say I hope you're doing okay. I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't apology. It wasn't a check-in. It was a tap on the window. The kind of message people send when they want to see if the door is still cracked open. A test. I didn't respond. The next day, she texted again. Lindsay, do you still have the blue blanket? The one my aunt gave me? I think I left it in the closet. I waited an hour, then replied, me, already donated. I hadn't, but she didn't need a blanket. She needed a reason to stay in my orbit. I wasn't giving her one. But that didn't stop her from trying. Over the next week, I got 3 more messages. One about a dentist bill that supposedly got mailed to the house. Another about her forgetting her Netflix password. One just said, Lindsay, miss the way your coffee used to smell in the mornings. That one? That was the ghost. That was her trying to haunt me. She wasn't asking to come back. Not yet. She just wanted to exist in my head again. To remind me of some fictional version of us that only she believed in now that the fantasy with Richard had collapsed. Yeah, that fell apart fast. Richard ghosted her within a month. Turns out, when your affair partner is your ex's stepfather and also a compulsive liar, things don't turn into a rom-com. They turn into regret. And now? She wanted comfort. She wanted me to be the soft place to land after she burned the one we built together. I didn't block her. That would have given her closure. Made it look like she still had power. Instead, I left her on read. I wanted her to feel that silence. To stare at her phone at night and wonder if I was happy, if I was seeing someone new, if I still thought about her. Because that's the worst kind of ghost to live with. The one that doesn't haunt you with rage or revenge, but with indifference. She came back one more time. Not physically, digitally. An Instagram message. A photo she sent of us at the cabin, from years ago. Before all this, Lindsay, we looked happy here, weren't we? I didn't reply, but I did one thing. I unfollowed her. Quiet, cold, final. Because ghosts don't get to live in houses they set on fire. It's been 3 months. That's how long it's been since Lindsay moved out. Since the divorce was finalized. Since I stood in that lawyer's office and signed the last piece of paper with a hand that didn't shake. People always say the end of a marriage feels like death. But honestly, it felt like release. The quiet stuck around, but it wasn't hollow anymore. It started to feel full, with peace, with clarity, with the kind of silence that doesn't beg to be filled. Just exists, like sunlight in a clean room. I got rid of a lot. Not out of bitterness, but because I wanted the house to reflect the man I was now. Not the one who made excuses. Not the one who looked the other way. Definitely not the one who let himself get played by his own stepfather. New couch, fresh paint, bought a record player and started collecting old vinyl, something I'd always wanted but never did, because she said it was a waste of space. The irony? Now I had plenty of space, of time, of truth, and then, just when I thought the story was over, I got a call. Unknown number, voicemail. It was Richard. I hadn't heard his voice since the night at the cabin. Just hearing it again made something inside me coil up tight. He said, I know I messed up. I was drunk, confused. I thought Lindsay and you were done. I was wrong. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. To both of you. I lost a lot too. I didn't delete the message. I didn't call back either. What did he lose? A woman who used him? A chance at playing dad again? Let him sit in that mess. I've got no intention of digging him out. As for Lindsay, she tried one more time. She emailed me. No subject line. Just a wall of text that read like someone trying to rewrite history with softer edges. She said she was in therapy now. Said she realized she had attachment issues, that she was searching for validation in the worst ways. That she never stopped loving me, just didn't know how to show it. She asked if I'd ever consider meeting, for closure. Closure. I stared at that word for a long time. Funny thing about closure, it's only a gift if you're giving it to yourself. I didn't respond, because I already had mine. It came the moment I realized that forgiveness isn't always a conversation. Sometimes, it's a decision. I forgave her, but I also forgot her. Not the facts, not the lessons, just the weight. And that's the cleanest break of all. Not when you slam the door, not when you burn their photos, not when you get even. It's when you realize they don't matter anymore. That the version of you they betrayed isn't the version of you that walks out of the wreckage. You're someone else now, someone stronger, smarter, lighter, and that's the best revenge of all.